In 2014, Panasonic shook up the camera market with the first small mirrorless camera that could record 4K internally. 96 FPS Full HD slow motion was also unheard of at this time. Many video shooters like me have since then moved on to newer cameras, and I sold my GH4 a couple of years ago because this old fella was only gathering dust since I got my GH5 and now the S1. But luckily I have been in contact with Markus, another fellow Austrian indie filmmaker who still uses his GH4 to make short films. So we just met up and took the GH4 to put it through its paces. I also took my GH5 with me to see how big of a difference there really is between these two cameras. Also, before we start, please check out the video I did on how I used the GH4 to shoot my first feature film back in 2015. The GH4 is a great little neat camera. It has a great form factor, it lays perfectly in my hand, and it has 3 wheels to quickly adjust your settings. So it's very intuitive and easy to use for videographers who work fast. The menu system is not the newest, but it still works great and it doesn't look too old. The preamps on the microphone is awesome. There is not only microphone input but also a headphone jack, so you can make sure that the sound is good. Overall, the body feels super sturdy. The body is densely made but not too heavy, so you can work with this thing easily in a professional work environment and work with it the whole day without any signs of exhaustion. So this thing was made to be used and to be worked with. You also get peaking and histogram and everything you need to judge your image. You also get the flip out screen, which is always awesome, and you also have a viewfinder, which is not the newest of course, but still up to the task. The sensor on the GH4 is not stabilized, unlike in the GH5, which many users still like because you have much more control over the stabilization. But if you want the GH4 sensor with stabilization, you can get the GX80, which has much less options, but the GH5 has internal stabilization. If you want a stabilized image in the GH4, you can still get stabilized lenses and work with that or put it on a gimbal. Another thing is that the GH4 is not compatible with the XLR module that I use with my GH5 and on my S1. So if you want XLR audio, you can use the Panasonic's own hand grip-like extension that has XLR and SDI output. So there are professional inputs and outputs on the GH4 if you want them, but you can also use third-party options, of course. As I already said, this camera is feature-packed when it comes to the recording modes. It can shoot in 4K DCI in 24p, in UHD in 24, 25 and 30p, and in full HD from 24 up to 60p, from 50 megabits per second up to 200 megabits per second in either IPB and all-eye compression, all in 8-bit 420. But if you want the best image quality, you can hook up this camera to an external recorder such as the Ninja 5 and record in all those modes in 10-bit onto an SSD drive. The image quality is awesome. It also gives you much more room to work with, especially if you want to use the V-Log-L profile with your GH4. V-Log-L is Panasonic's own log profile, which you can install onto your camera for around $100. But if you get this camera or the GH5 for example used, you might get a copy that has V-Log already installed. It just helps you with your color grading. The colors are great in V-Log-L, and if you have a color grading workflow with LUTs for example, you can get very decent dynamic range and performance. Just check out some tutorials on YouTube on how to create log footage. The only downside for me on the GH4 is the micro HDMI. This is not a secure and reliable connections, and the cables break very easily. So if you use an external recorder and the micro HDMI, please make sure to work very carefully. Our test setup was the GH4 hooked up to a Ninja 5 to record in ProRes 4:2 in 10-bit. The GH5 recorded 10-bit internally because it can do that on the SD card. Both cameras shot in V-Log-L, and we used on both cameras the Olympus 12-40 f2.8. So let's take a look at the images. A downside on the GH4 is the crop in 4K. Since it doesn't have such a powerful processor such as new cameras as like the GH5 for example, it can only use the portion in the center of the image that can deliver 4K. So you punch in on your image when you record in 4K. In Full HD it gets downscaled for a very sharp Full HD image. The crop of 1.3 times in 4K can be a problem, but that is why Metabones released its Speedbooster XL, which elevated the sensor crop to APS-C on the GH4. If you don't use that, you are closer to Super 16 than to MFT. Sharpness in both 4K and Full HD is great. You have a lot of data to work with, and there are many details that are retained. Just keep in mind that in 4K you get a 1:1 readout, so it can happen that you get moire in your picture, but it's not like this camera is prone to produce moire. It just can happen and you just have to look for it. Now we compare the dynamic range between the GH5 and the GH4 by performing a latitude test. In this test setup, we both used the same lens and the same V-Log-L profile and shot both cameras in 10-bit. I also applied Panasonic's own V-Log LUT to get a better comparison. And as we can see, the GH4 has a little bit more contrast, as we can see in the darker shadows, and the highlight roll-off is nicer on the GH5. But I wouldn't hesitate to mix these two cameras now because they look very similar in color and both are very beautiful. There maybe is half of a stop of a difference between those two, but for a 7-year-old camera this is a great performance. Now let's look at latitude. First we overexposed the image and brought it back down to get a comparison to the correctly exposed image. When we expose one stop over, we can already see that we lose details in the very bright areas of the image, but I would say both cameras perform very equally there. So both cameras struggle when they are overexposed, but when we underexpose, I would say you can underexpose by 1 or maybe 2 stops when you are in a pinch. But here we can see the disadvantage of the sensor crop on the GH4. The noise is much more magnified. As you can see, in comparison it's more colorful and in general more noisy than the more grain-like noise on the GH5. The GH5 also retains a little bit more shadow details than the GH4. I would say the GH4 is still a very good performer when it comes to dynamic range. It was certainly one of the best cameras in its class when it came out, but it still can hold a candle to the GH5. Of course, nowadays we have cameras that have much more dynamic range, but I think it's a solid performer, and for the price you get this camera nowadays, it's awesome. One of the coolest features on the GH4 is the slow motion. You can record in 1080p up to 60 frames per second, and you can slow it down in post down to 24p for example, but you can also record this frame rate externally in 10-bit, but it doesn't end there. I know it's awesome for color grading when you have 10-bit color, but it's also nice to have variable frame rates. In this mode, the camera records internally, and you can set variable frame rates in small increments from 2 frames up to 96 frames per second, which is awesome. This is a 4 times slow motion in 24p. Just be aware that when you use the 96 frames per second, that the data rate is very slim, and when you have a picture with a lot of small details, that it gets a little bit soft. But I still think that the 96 frames per second option on the GH4 is awesome, and I wouldn't hesitate a minute to use it nowadays. Just keep in mind what you can shoot with it and what not. The GH4 has continuous autofocus, but Panasonic was never a benchmark when it comes to autofocus, of course. You will get your desired object in focus, but there is a lot of hunting on the GH4 when you look at the background. The GH5, of course, is no star either, but the transitions are much smoother. So if you need continuous autofocus on the GH4, it's there and you can use it. In Relook L, the GH4 produces beautiful colors. If you know how to color grade, you can create any look that you want. Just be aware, if you already used Panasonic cameras with Relook L or Relock, you will see that the Relook L on the GH4 is more on the cooler side with a touch of green in the skin tones, which was pushed more to red on newer cameras like the GH5 and the S1. This results in muted skin colors, but if you know what you're doing, you can still get pleasing skin tones. In my opinion, the Relook L and the natural picture profile produce the most beautiful skin tones. Cine like D can mess up your skin tones pretty fast if you don't expose correctly or use the right white balance. Trust me, I've been there. It can take hours to fix this, so that's just my opinion. Maybe some other people have different experiences. This is just my appearance that I had with this camera. Sadly, we couldn't test everything on the GH4, but I was so surprised on how well the camera held up to the GH5. I still think that it is a worthy contender even in 2021. You can definitely use this camera in a professional environment and use it if you want to get into filmmaking. I was able to find used bodies for around 400 euros. So if you get a decent recorder like the Ninja 5 and, for example, a Viltrox Speedbooster to use with EF glass, you get a 10-bit 4K powerhouse that also happens to shoot 4 times slow motion in full HD internally for around 1,000 bucks. That's a pretty sweet deal if you ask me. And if you already have a GH5, GH5S or S1, S1H and so on, and you want a B or C camera, the GH4 will neatly fit into your workflow. This was a lot of fun. I want to thank Markus, who was kind enough to let me test the camera and see what it was able to produce. It was a blast, and I hope you produce many more beautiful images with this little gem. So that's it from me. If you have any questions about the camera, please post down in the comments below. And if you like this review, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. And I hope you have a nice day and create something extraordinary.